So this evening we come to the fourth Samgravastus, which is Samanarthata, otherwise known as exemplification. So you'll remember that over the last 3 weeks we've looked at the other three Samgravastus. I'm sorry, Shakyajata, I couldn't say it right then. Which are generosity or dana, kindly speech, priyavadita, and artacharya, or beneficial activity, which means activity that helps each other to grow and develop. And I said last week, didn't I, that these four are what helps us to know how to do Sangha. So how we do Sangha is we practice the four Samgrahavastus. Because Sangha is a doing word, not a noun. It's a verb. It really should be Sangaring. Yeah? So we can ask ourselves, how do I Sangha? Yeah? Rather than, how can I get some Sangha? Yeah? So I'm going to plunge right in straight away and get us started on Samanarthata. I'm going to do my best to not rustle my paper, but I have got paper here, so there may well be some paper noise. So usually we think of exemplification as practicing what we preach. And indeed, an enlightened being or a bodhisattva will attract a Sangha, will bring people together through naturally living the Dharma. By completely practicing what she or he preaches, without any sense of trying. They won't need to have a practice of dana. They will just do it because it'll be what their natural state is. A bodhisattva is the embodiment of all the qualities, including generosity, kindly speech, naturally helping people to grow, and encouraging and inspiring them to develop. And I'm sure, like me, you will find this list of qualities very inspiring. But what does it mean for us? Because we are not Buddhas. Well, you might be, but I'm not. What does it mean for us who are not Buddhas, who are not enlightened, who are not bodhisattvas? I certainly have a vision of how I want to be and how I want to live and act, as I'm sure you all do. And I fall short of this again and again and again. So I get impatient. In fact, impatience is the thing I struggle with most. Craving, lots of that around. And I get irritable. In fact, I had a great wave of irritability this morning. Yeah, because somebody did something that I didn't like. There was nothing wrong with it, I just didn't like it. So how do we, as mere non-bodhisattvas, perhaps aspiring bodhisattvas, how do we practice exemplification then? What does this Samgravavastu mean for us? Are we to give up now and wait until we're fully enlightened? Stay in a darkened room until we're fully enlightened to go out and make a Sangha happen? It certainly doesn't mean being a good Buddhist. You might know that expression. You might even have heard yourself think or use that expression. Doing what we're supposed to do in Triratna, in our community, so that we fit in. Just so we fit in. So how do we exemplify the Buddhist life and the Buddhist practice if it's not perfect? And if we keep falling off the path? Oh, where's Paul gone? Well, so there are two things we do. First of all, what we can exemplify is the effort to practice. We can make an effort. We can make an effort. And secondly, what we're exemplifying is the impact that practice has. The impact that practice has through our meditation, through practicing ethics, through being generous, friendly, kind, helpful, etc. And then we just get on and we do our best to practice day after day. And you know what? Because of karma, if we do those things, we will change. If we believe that actions have consequences and we believe in the law of karma, we will change. We will develop enlightened qualities. And we will be lovely to be around. And that means we will attract the Sangha. We will be calm, warm, peaceful, etc. It just takes time. So here's a question for us all. Why bother? Why bother making an effort? Well, first of all, because it gives rise to faith, to confidence, and to trust that the practices we do together, that the three jewels work. So just if you can, remember what it was like when you first came to Buddhism. Do you remember? Just give us a little wave of your hand if you can recall when you first came to the Dharma. And just ask yourself, what was I like? What were you like when you first came to the Dharma? What were you like? What was it like when you arrived in a Buddhist centre? And what were the people like that you came in contact with? And then you can ask yourself, so am I still like that? In what way am I different to when I first came along? It really matters that we keep reviewing our practice and noticing the impact it has, because that can give us confidence. So when I first met Buddhism and Sri Ratna, it was the FWBO then, in 1988, the first person who taught me to meditate was Sangha Devi at Taraloka on a newcomer's weekend. And the reason I went back again and again and again, and I was very determined to not become a Buddhist, was because of the people. It was because of the women. There was something about them that I wanted. I wanted to have around, I wanted it in my life, whatever it was. I didn't know what it was. Do you know what I mean? You sort of think, blimey, they've got something, I want it, yeah? Yeah. And I wanted to be around that, and I wanted to have it for myself. So when I think back, what I think I was noticing was a brightness, an aliveness, a clarity, and a peacefulness. There was no fretting. And I'd gone to Taraloka because I was really suffering with severe anxiety and was on medication for that. They were so smiley and friendly and very encouraging and allowing. So then the next person who comes to mind for me is Kalyana Prabha, who some of you will know. And Kalyana Prabha was my Mitra study leader in Manchester. At the time, there were 2 women order members in Manchester. There were 3 women order members in the north of England. And Kalyana Prabha really inspired me. And I was rather in awe of her because she knew so much about the Dharma. So she's a great thinker and she's a woman of great clarity of mind, very encouraging, particularly of our capacity to think for ourselves, very honest and very normal and very transparent about her own struggles and very kind. And then in 2010, I moved to Manchester from Lancaster because of the people. Because of the people. I moved into the women's community because my friends lived there. So I moved in with Vidyamala, who's my Kalyana Mitra, with Munisha, and with Dayanandi and Amita Shuri. I only moved to Manchester because of my friends and what they were like. So Munisha is a woman of great integrity, who's an amazing communicator. Vidyamala is very confident and incredibly determined. Who else do you know who's got a spine that's broken in 2 places, who travels the world teaching mindfulness, practicing what she preaches? And Dayanandi is very, very wise and kind. And Amita Shuri is very brave, empathic, wholehearted, who lives life to the full. She and I didn't always get on, but because we both practiced the Dharma, we worked it out. And then more recently, I'd like to mention my lovely friend Varasaki, who is here in person on the screen. So Varasaki and I have been very good friends for a long time, but we fell out in 2018. And because of the 3 jewels and because of our practice, we've both changed, we've both grown, and we've been able to talk about our differences and grow from that experience together. So our friendship exemplifies spiritual friendship. Spiritual friendship's not always cozy, as I'm sure all of you here know. Yeah? Yeah. So all these people, all the people we hang out with and spend time with in the Sangha, give us a vision of how we could become. Basically, we are role models for each other. But we don't just role model the goal, we role model the process of how we carry on changing and challenging and supporting ourselves and each other. So as human beings, we respond to people who show us what we can become. So I'm going to just mention that teaching from the Buddha that I've mentioned already. So the 4 sights. So you will recall that the Buddha was a prince, called Siddhartha. And he had absolutely everything you could ever dream of, including 4 palaces, 1 for each season, and all the singing and dancing women you could want. And he had a wife and a child. And he was destined to be the king of the area when his father died. But he was deeply disillusioned with his life. It didn't satisfy him spiritually. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he was longing for meaning. And over a period of time, he went out into the world, went out 4 times. The first time he went out, he saw someone who was sick, and he didn't know what it was. It was as if he'd never seen a sick person. I'm wondering if actually he'd never really seen what a sick person was, because he was shielded from it. And when his chariot driver told him that this was a sick person, the Buddha was horrified because he also learnt that he too and his wife and his child would become sick. The next time he went out, he saw an old person. And again, it was as if the Buddha had never ever come across aging ever before. He saw the old person, realised that he and all his family would get old, and life had even less meaning for him than it had before. And then the fourth time he went out into the world, he saw a dead person being taken to the cremation ground. And this filled him with more horror and more despair about what is life about then if we're all going to die. But the fourth time he went out, he saw a holy man, a wandering ascetic. And this sight inspired the Buddha. He saw in that person hope for a different way of encountering and coming into relationship with life. It was an anonymous, wandering mendicant who inspired the Buddha to go forth and seek the meaning and purpose of life. And we can be a fourth sight for each other. In fact, we are a fourth sight for each other. So, what I'd like us to do now, Sandeep, if it's all right, we go into our breakout rooms, more about what the benefits really of making an effort, as it were, and the benefits of exemplification. So another benefit is that whatever anyone else does, you can always, we can always do our best. It doesn't matter what anyone else does. So if we ever find ourselves thinking or saying, but they did it, what do we think? What are we going to do? Yeah. So whatever anyone else does, we can always do our best to practice the Dharma. And that can be exemplifying. To act, to contribute, to do, if you like, more than our fair share. We can take responsibility for what is happening to us in our lives and in our minds. As in, we can take responsibility for our mental states. Because what we put out into the world will often have an influence on what we get back from other people. We are part of the dynamics of the situations around us. And this ultimately affects how we experience ourselves and other people and our lives. So what we put out there comes back in some form, not obvious, sometimes not always obviously, in an obvious way. So in the Sangha, if no one volunteers to make the tea, do the washing up, have to add something current now, host a Zoom meeting, etc. Whatever anyone else does or does not do, we can always act. Can we do 51%? Can we do 51%? So as most of you know, all of you know, I lived in a women's community, the women's community, for 8 years. And I used to sometimes moan that I seemed to be always the one who emptied the dishwasher. It really was not helpful, that moaning. Apparently, there's a tendency for everyone to think they're doing slightly more than everyone else, and that other people aren't really putting enough effort in. So can we do 51%? Can we take responsibility? Because if everybody is prepared to do 51% and not feel resentful about it, everything gets done brilliantly. And we're only talking 51%. Okay. So I think there's a reflection I'd like to encourage you to think about. I think this is a longer term reflection. So can we reflect on what we're on how what we're doing is contributing to our experience of life around us? What we're doing is contributing to our experience of life around us and to the dynamics of situations we are in. Okay, so I'm going to move on now. We're going to, excuse me a moment. We're going to look now at what is it that we are actually exemplifying? How can we be role models to embody the Dharma? What we are trying to exemplify is the three jewels, but not in an abstract way, but as really lived out principles in life. What does it look like when you live the three jewels in your life and in my life? And then secondly, what we're exemplifying is the process of becoming and the process of the change that living according to the three jewels and looking at exemplifying the process of that. So we're exemplifying the effort to practice and the attainment that happens slowly over time. We're not necessarily, of course, Buddhas will be, exemplifying enlightenment. Yeah. So let's look at the effort. So in exemplifying the effort, we're exemplifying the process we're engaged in, the process to change and develop in the Dharma. And in Sri Ratna, of course, we call this going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. That is, we're depending on the three jewels more and more, and using them to inform everything we do in our lives to a greater and greater extent. We're gradually steering the great weight of our beings and our lives, and sometimes it can feel like it's an oil tanker, in the direction of the spiritual. So this looks like exemplifying how we practice ethics. Can we talk about our practice of ethics? Can we show up? So, for example, when I'm tired, I feel irritable. All of you, I think, will have probably been on the receiving end of that, perhaps apart from Paul, but the rest of you have, I'm sure. Can we show up and can we say that? Can we share how we are? Can we let people know that we feel tired, that we feel irritable? I used to think that it was never okay to say you were tired, that however I had to always shine and be smiley. I thought that's what it all meant. I thought that's what the Dharma life was about. But actually it doesn't. It means being honest and being real. And if we want to really find out what reality is with a big R, we have to start with the little r of the real in the moment. So how can we be really honest? We don't have to know everything. Yeah, we don't have to know everything. We can exemplify a not knowing and not understanding, and we can ask for help. We're often going to feel tired. We're going to feel irritable. We're going to feel downhearted. And as Bhante said, we can always do our best to be friendly, which begins by acknowledging how we are and saying, I'm sorry, and hello. Yeah. I think the other thing is we can focus on our own practice. Let's exemplify focusing on our own practice. Whatever other people are doing, and whatever other people are like. We cannot make people be just how we want them to be. We cannot make them behave however we want them to behave, even if their behaviour currently is perhaps unskillful. We cannot make them behave how we want them to behave. So, for example, I used to have a colleague, a work colleague, who never said hello to anyone in the morning, who used to say hello to, there used to be a couple of cats at the bottom of our office, and the person would say hello to the cats, but never said hello to me in the office. And I really didn't enjoy that. Actually, I found it painful. So that the honest thing is that I found that painful. But for years, I had this story in my head about them being a very unfriendly person and not liking me. And, you know, you can imagine, can't you? Maybe you would have had a novel in your head too. Yeah. But actually, I cannot make that person say hello to me. So at a certain point, I determined to be friendly, however they were. And it was not easy. But I just decided I'm going to be friendly. Just because they don't do what I call friendly, I will keep being friendly. Yeah. Yeah. And then another thing we can do is we can take the lead. Okay? We can take the lead. We don't have to wait for someone else to give us permission. In fact, there's a lovely phrase that I use at work, which is that I think I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission. Yeah. I want to just read you a bit of a story from the Pali Canon so that you'll know this story, some of you. It's the story that's called the Case of Dysentery. Okay. So the Buddha came across a monk in his hut who had got dysentery and who was in a very filthy state. And he was with his companion Ananda. And this is what it says. The Buddha could easily have got someone else to look after this monk. He was a man of great influence. He almost certainly had a lot of things he could do, but he didn't ask anyone else. He just did it himself. He acted straight away. And about this, Bhante says the following. The Buddha acted instantly. As a human being, he seemed to have been a rather prompt, decisive character, not unlike a military commander. But at this stage, he doesn't ask anyone how it all happened. How come this poor monk is on his own, lying in filth? He simply sends Ananda off to fetch water. Then the Buddha and Ananda act together. Ananda doesn't argue with the Buddha. They don't have a long conversation as to who should pour the water and who should wash the sick man, or who should take him by the head and who should take him by the feet. They act together harmoniously, efficiently, and effectively. Perhaps, even more importantly, the Buddha and Ananda accept responsibility for the situation, even though it is not of their making. They do not try to hand the responsibility over to anyone else, but they take care of the sick monk themselves, doing whatever needs to be done. They make the sick monk comfortable, and only then does the Buddha call the monks together. I'm not sure there's any more to say about that. For me, I think that story says it all. So we can simply exemplify by doing what needs to be done to the best of our ability, yeah, in the moment. And I think that the next point I want to make is that whatever we do, let's do it with love. Let's do it for love. You'll remember that all the other Samgravasthus arise out of metta. We give out of affection for someone. We speak kindly out of affection and concern for someone. We practice beneficial activity to help each other grow and develop because we love. And we exemplify, we make an effort and act and take responsibility because we love. We do it for love and affection. Subhuti, in his book, Mind in Harmony, says that we have to fall in love with the Dharma in order to keep it up, because the spiritual life is hard. We're going against the tide of an awful lot of the rest of our lives. So in order to keep going, to enjoy it, we have to find joy in it. We must fall in love with the Dharma and love it passionately. And then I think the other thing that can help is that we need to rejoice in each other's efforts. Let's celebrate the effort that we all make. Yeah, so last week and in Priyavadita, we talked about rejoicing in merits, didn't we? So that's another thing we can exemplify. We can mirror back the development, the attainments that we see happening in our friends. And that gives us confidence. And I think, we can also put our energy into developing our qualities and our talents. We don't all need to become the same. In fact, that would be, A, it'd be boring. But B, we've got all got our own talents and qualities. Buddhism doesn't say anywhere that we should hide our talents. We should, keep them to ourselves. What the world needs is lots of talent. And if you look in the Pali Canon, you'll find that all the different disciples of the Buddha had different qualities, and the Buddha made something of that. So Ananda had an amazing memory. He just remembered everything the Buddha had said. He was obviously a very loyal and devoted companion as well. And then Subhuti, one of the Buddha's disciples, he was really great at explaining the Buddha's teachings. And Mahakāshyapa, another of the famous disciples of the Buddha, he was an exemplar at ascetic practice, at renunciation. So let's all encourage each other to show and shine our own talents, whatever they are. It might be being friendly. You might be a great listener. You might be a brilliant cook. You might like clearing up after people, doing the flowers, decorating. You don't have to be a teacher, but in fact we all teach through sharing our qualities and our talents anyway. And developing our qualities, our enlightened qualities, our qualities of open-heartedness and love, generosity, skillful speech, is a long-term project. We change over years. Excuse me. We just have to keep going, and that's why falling in love with the Dharma helps, along with the support and encouragement of our friends. Buddhist ideals are very, very, very big ideals. Eradicating completely hatred, greed, and spiritual ignorance completely is a big deal, isn't it? Can you imagine a time when you never, ever, ever feel any ill will or closed-heartedness ever to anything or anyone ever? When we're never, ever confused, ever. It's a long-term project. Keep going. Keep going.